After Swamp Thing failed, director Wes Craven hit a dry spell. He needed money, so he finally agreed to make a sequel to The Hills Have Eyes. Craven wrote and directed the film. It was shot in 1983 before the production ran out of money. It was then put on a shelf. It hit some European festivals in mid-1984 before a US theatrical release on August 2, 1985. The shoot was for 24 days with the understanding that an additional 5 to 6 days of reshoots would be done after viewing the assembly cut. That is actually very common in the industry. There's always these scandalous headlines about movies going into reshoots, but almost every Hollywood film has them, certainly the big budget ones. If you've ever made a film or a video, you know that once you're in editing, you'll notice a million things you didn't while you were shooting. Maybe certain shots don't cut together well, or something's wrong with the audio. Reshoots are a natural part of the process. They can go wrong naturally, but it's no different than rewriting an essay or a book when it needs it. However, films with smaller budgets tend not to do this because they don't have the money for it. Disney can afford 6 days of reshoots for, let's say, Mulan, and that is worked into the budget. The production for The Hills Have Eyes 2 either didn't have the money for reshoots or simply didn't want to spend the money. The story takes place 7 years after the original. Bobby, one of the 4 survivors of the first film, is in therapy trying to deal with his PTSD. Brenda is seen in stock footage flashbacks, but never mentioned by name. Doug is neither seen nor mentioned. Bobby became business partners with Ruby, the daughter of the cannibal family from the first film. She helped the 3 survive and has become a functioning member of society, now going by Rachel. The 2 own a motorcycle racing team. Bobby has developed a super formula that's essentially rocket fuel for motorcycles. Their team needs to compete in a race that will show off the formula. They will then sell the formula and become rich. However, the race takes place in the desert near where the first film took place. Due to his PTSD, Bobby decides not to go. Rachel takes the team instead, which consists of 7 people, none of whom are single. All 8 are in a relationship with someone else on the team. There's Rachel and Hulk, Roy and Cass, Sue and Foster, and Harry and Jane. The team realizes that they're going to be late because all 8 of them forgot about daylight savings time, so they decide to take a shortcut. They run out of gas and decide to stop and look around the abandoned desert for some. They are attacked by Pluto, Rachel's brother, who somehow survived being eaten by a dog. Said dog, Beast, also returns for the sequel and has more screen time than Bobby. He even gets his own flashback sequence. They begin splitting up, as you do, and they are picked off one by Pluto and a new villain named Reaper. He is the brother of the cannibal dad from the first movie, so Rachel and Pluto's uncle. Beast pushes Pluto off a cliff. Roy and Cass then use Bobby's super fuel to blow Reaper up in the bus. I don't think a week of reshoots would have helped much, because this script is ass. The contrivances are the worst. I mentioned it in the summary, but daylight savings time being an actual plot point is just terrible. I could not have rolled my eyes harder at that. Setup and payoff in this is awful. The only thing it sets up that pays off is the super fuel. Beyond it being blindingly obvious that the fuel will be used as an explosive in the finale, it's poorly set up. We never get to see it in action. The characters just talk about it. The movie has Phantom Menace syndrome in that it doesn't know who the protagonist is. The film starts with Bobby, but then drops him in the first act. Roy and Cass are the survivors, but Roy is knocked unconscious towards the beginning of Act 2 and doesn't show up again until Act 3. Cass spends most of her screen time standing in the background until Act 3 when Reaper decides to attack her. Most of Act 2 is spent on Rachel and the cannon fodder, but Rachel's given a very unceremonious death to the point that I didn't even realize she had died. I spent the entire third act wondering where the hell she went. There are only 3 characters with any meat on their bones: Bobby, Rachel, and Cass. As I said, Bobby's dropped instantly, which was a bad decision. His PTSD is the most interesting part of the movie and feels very in line with the end of the first movie. As I said in my review of it, the survivors of that movie can never go back to who they were. The violence they experienced and had to resort to in order to live was harrowing. Seeing Bobby face his trauma and overcome it could have been a great story, even better if Brenda and Doug were there too. But the movie ditches its most captivating character. Maybe the actor was only available for like a day of shooting. Rachel complicates things. Bobby is so traumatized by the first film that he can't go anywhere near a desert, but he can be business partners with a member of that family? Also, Rachel seems to not have much PTSD. She's a little stressed, but nothing a cigarette can't fix. I feel like she would be the one with the most anxiety about this. She was a member of that family. How can she stomach going back? There is story potential in Rachel confronting the surviving members of her family, the family she betrayed, but nothing much is done with it. She has 2 fights with Pluto, the first of which she kicks his ass in, but that's it. Other than that, she's exposition. Cass is blind. It's her entire personality. At first, I was impressed that the movie seemed to make her blind for no real reason. Blind people exist, and they could be protagonists of movies without it being gimmicky. But it quickly devolves into the dumb thing where being blind means she has superpowers. Her senses of smell and sound are insane. She's basically psychic. But then her powers are inconsistent. She can tell that Harry has a soda from the sound of the bubbles, but later can't hear Jane being crushed to death in the next room and can't smell the large puddle of blood on the floor. Also, every character seems to consistently forget that she's blind and will say something wildly insensitive to her. It's a weird recurring gag. Her blindness is also a missed opportunity. While it might suck to use a disability as a gimmick, this is a horror movie. A blind lead character is a genius setup for that. For non-blind people, imagine how much scarier being attacked by Michael Myers would be if you couldn't see. But the movie never takes advantage of that. Her blindness is never used to create suspense or to unnerve the audience. And because she's blind, Craven doesn't know what to do with her. She mostly just stands in the background until everybody else is dead. The male characters are all the same person. They're the comedic relief, or assholes.
To the beach again this weekend? You got a great tan.
Yuck, yuck. I just love his white bread sense of humor.
The 2 remaining women are Sue and Jane. They exist. I guess they're TNA? I don't know, I got nothing. There are way too many characters in this. Friday the 13th Part 2 also had a big cast, but it secludes a specific group of them for Jason to attack. And the individual characters were charismatic enough to stand apart from each other. Here, everyone feels interchangeable, boring at best, and nails on a chalkboard annoying at worst. Reaper and Pluto are also not great villains. They're not particularly interesting, just generically crazy, but not entertaining or intimidating enough to pull that off. Reaper's so lame that he jumps through a window to scare Cass, and then gets his foot stuck, which is how Cass gets away. That would be great in like a parody, but it's kind of embarrassing here. Reaper's only real method to scare the kids is to stand in the dark and whisper their name, which would be kind of creepy if he did it like once, but he does it constantly. It seems to be his only move, and it's really lame. The movie can't have made much money due to its limited release. It also took a critical beating and is not fondly remembered. But it got a Blu-ray release, so it's doing better than Kiss Meets the Phantom of the Park.
Gene's brother was an only child.
Easy, Catman. They are serious.
And they've got guns.
The movie's bad. Like, really bad. It's a frustratingly weak script with poor characterization, lame scares, and no real story. Craven disowned the movie, and it's pretty clear that he didn't give a shit about it while he was making it. He was probably preoccupied with his next theatrical endeavor, a film about a man who kills people in their dreams.